Hey Mutant Investors! This week I'll be answering a question from Vincent. He was asking about MMTLP, or the preferred shares for MetaMaterials. Check it out. Hey everyone! Welcome back to another edition of my YouTube channel on special situations investing and my personal investing practice. As a quick disclaimer, this video is for educational purposes only. Any companies that I mention in this presentation are discussed solely for illustrative purposes. Discussing such companies and the specifics about them is to help educate me and educate you about certain special situations. It is not a solicitation to purchase them. I recommend that you conduct your own research and identify why you might want to own the company yourself prior to your committing of any funds. I also recommend that you seek the services of a financial advisor that has considered your personal situation as your fiduciary. And then finally, may your education here grow your knowledge, improve your personal investing performance, and give you the confidence to take control of your future. Thanks a bunch for watching. Now on to the video. The preferred shares for MetaMaterials will be used for part of the spin-off called Oilco from MetaMaterials holding company. And what they're doing is they're taking, they were part of a Torchlight acquisition that was done about, I think 18 months ago or something like that, maybe 2 years. Either way, MetaMaterials went out, they purchased the company Torchlight, and Torchlight had some oil holdings that were part of the business. MetaMaterials is a company that's trying to attract a lot of ESG or environmental, social, and governance dollars, and so they are not interested in keeping the oil rights that Torchlight had, and so as part of that acquisition they are preparing to sell off the assets. Vincent, in his question, he said, hey, can you look into the special situation that MetaMaterials and its spin-off Oilco, including the great mystery called MMTLP. So I'm going to focus today's video on talking about that MMTLP portion of it, and then I'll spend some time, maybe if I have some time, I'll look at the rest of MetaMaterials later. I did some digging. I read through the 10K this last week and spent some time just trying to understand the business. MetaMaterials looks like it's a company that's going to spend a lot of time in their research and development arm, but the MMTLP are the preferred shares that are designated for the Torchlight Oil Company work. And so let's do some digging into this. After digging through the 10K, the best that I can understand, it looks like MMTLP are the preferred shares that are associated with the oil company spinoff. And the thing that I've looked at this is, there's a couple of things that come to mind when I immediately see an oil company. The first thing is I think specifically of Peter Lynch's perspectives, and he says a couple of things on that oil companies are cyclical companies. And then he says, you know, you want to buy cyclicals when the economy is at its weakest, earnings are at their lowest, and public sentiment is at its bleakest. I would argue that right now in the United States, at least, is not necessarily a weak economy, and especially I know that prices are not at their lowest for oil. I mean, we're staring at over $100 a barrel right now versus, you know, just about a year ago it was closer to 50. And then the public sentiment is not dour, and the oil earnings are not necessarily low at present. So Peter Lynch also, he explains that silly prices are often followed by sobriety. And I would argue that in this case that might be what happens with the Oilco holdings for that came out of this Torchlight thing that are part of the MetaMaterials preferred share spinoff. So with that in mind, that's just my sentiment, and I want you to be aware of that before you get into this, so that you understand that I do have some bias in this, and my bias for oil companies, and in particular oil companies as part of a spinoff, is that you need to be very, very cautious as you get into these. I have put money into oil companies out of spinoffs before. I've had mixed results, not necessarily the best, not necessarily the worst, but I just haven't been too enamored with the experience and haven't had good fortune coming out of those. With that in mind, I dug through the 10K. I spent some time trying to understand it a little bit better, and I think I came across what I think is worth my time, and hopefully it answers Vincent's question. And this is on page 51. Actually, it starts on page 50, where this is note number 2 in the financials, and they have the oil and natural gas properties and preferred stock liability. And then they identify what the valuation of the company was at their acquisition. And the valuation that they had was somewhere between $57 and $101 million. And that was back in June of 2021. And then they went ahead and did a fair value in December, and the fair value, according to KPMG, is totaling the value of all of those assets somewhere around $75.5 million, and that's according, and you can find that on page 51 and 56. 51, they did have the project value at that time was closer to about $72.6 million. And so these are the assets that they're putting out there in the spinoff in these preferred shares. And the frustrating thing for anybody who might be holding the money on this is, if you look at the valuation in December 31, 2021 on this, that they have 164 million, almost 165 million preferred shares outstanding. It's actually 165.9 million, or 64.9 million non-voting preferred shares. And so here's how I look at this. Really simple, off-the-cuff perspective on this is, if I'm buying the asset that's worth approximately $75 million, and I have 164 million shares on this, 165 million shares, I'm looking at almost 50 cents on the dollar or almost 50 cents for every share. Well, in this case, the company is currently trading those preferred shares around $1 a share. And so to me, that immediately makes me think I must have missed something. So I did some additional digging. These wells, if you look in their 2021 developments, the company spent $14 million in order to maintain the property so that they meet their continuous drilling requirements. And they want to make sure that they do that, because if they don't do that, then they don't maintain the ability to continue to use those lands as oil producing lands. The problem is it doesn't seem like they're producing a lot of oil out of this. And if you look in their properties, they didn't. It's not like they're bringing in a bunch of cash on this, and they're just kind of holding the assets, getting ready to get rid of them. Now, I probably will be wrong, and I might be missing something, but from what I'm understanding is, if you have an asset that isn't putting out a lot of oil production, and that's what it's supposed to be doing, and you're spending $14 million a year or $10 million a year to maintain the value of about $75 million of assets, then there's no reason to continue to be a part of that. I'm not saying that I'm shorting this. In fact, I don't think that I will short this. I'm not even going to enter either way, but I wanted to answer Vincent's question, kind of give him an idea of what I think about this. I imagine, because I've seen enough on the social media areas, I imagine that I might have a lot of people get on here and tell me that I don't understand what's going on with this. And you're probably right. Based on what I've seen, I don't feel like I have I don't have like an edge on anybody else. And so there's probably people out there that have a better perspective. And if you do, please share it in the comments. I'd like to see what I missed and what needs to be put out there in order to make it worth more than $1 a share. Now, if I missed something, you know what, that's part of the reason why I disclose what I do and do not invest in. This is not something that I feel comfortable enough having any type of information that gives me an edge over a large investor, or those shorts for the matter. Anyway, hey guys, thanks so much for watching today, and I hope you have a wonderful week. and we will catch you next week.